Not long after we are born, we discover that life is complicated. It's full of peaks and valleys, of triumphs and tribulations. How we make sense of the world and our place in it forms what is called a worldview. According to a masterclass article posted earlier this year, every human being has their own worldview, whether they know it or not. It manifests tangibly in their religious viewpoints, political allegiances, and moral practices. It also informs how they see the world, their place in it, and the personal standards to which they hold themselves. Masterclass, trying to illustrate the point, lists 4 examples. A humanist worldview suggests that humanity, can figure out the answers to life's big questions all on our own. We don't need any supernatural power to help us. We possess in our own ability everything that's necessary to understand life. A naturalist worldview, in comparison, believes that the natural world is what provides a source of inspiration or understanding for what's needed to answer life's big questions. A postmodern view, in comparison, believes that truth is subjective. So personal preference provides the framework for answering life's big questions, and everybody's preference is equally valued, equally valuable. A religious worldview, finally, in their examples, suggests that the answers to life's big questions can be found in sacred texts or in religious authorities, people in particular that lived a certain way. So, for example, a Christian worldview would draw on the life and teaching of Jesus to help navigate the complexities of life. My point in sharing this idea about everybody having worldviews and some examples of worldviews is to recognize there's more than one way to understand our world and our place in it. In fact, people are increasingly rejecting or abandoning the Christian religious worldview. Now, while there are many well-researched and documented reasons for the rise in people claiming no religious preference, the so-called rise of the nones, it seems to me that one of the most pressing concerns, maybe part of what feeds into that trend, is our inability, those who subscribe to such a worldview, our inability to name and live out a Christian worldview. Many of us have grown so comfortable sitting on the sidelines of society. We've become passive observers, perhaps voicing concern or complaint now and again, but more often than not, we settle for trying to get a little more than our parents got so we can pass along a little more than we received. We adopt a live and let live philosophy, which practically means, so long as you don't mess with me and mine, I won't mess with you and yours. We retreat into private sanctuaries where life is distilled down to getting what we want when we want it. From our entertainment to our dining, everything is on demand. I'm not sure what worldview represents this hyper-individualistic approach, but I find it to be contrary to the life and the teaching of Jesus. If I'm going to call myself a follower of Christ, if you claim to be a Christian, I believe we have work to do. We must not only reject individualism and its cousins, consumerism and nationalism, we must offer a more compelling narrative, a more compelling alternative. It's not just enough to say what we're against. We need to claim and show the world what we are for. So in this series, I've been asking, who's got next? Again, what I'm trying to suggest is that we move from the sidelines of the world, sidelines of society, the sidelines of our own lives, and we get in the game. That we are those that are ready to participate. Who's got next, right? I'm using that idea of a pickup basketball game where there's a group of people ready to get in as soon as the court opens up. Who's got next when it comes to living like Jesus? That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm after in this message and in this particular series. What might it look like for you and me and others to use our talent, our ability, our passion to show the world a life lived for and with Jesus? I'm framing this as, in my particular context, as what makes the people of North Cross, the church that I serve, what makes the people of North Cross the people of North Cross? What is unique about us? What is the commitments that we've made? What are those commitments that we've made that help others know why we do what we do? And for that matter, what is it that we do? How will we live out the mission that Jesus lives? How will we love God and love our neighbors? Again, here at North Cross, following in Jesus' example, we're emphasizing 4 priorities, 4 commitments: empowering all generations, serving others, creating opportunities to grow in God's love, and securing the resources necessary to live out, to fulfill those commitments. We started this series by asking about what does it look like to empower all generations. And I invite you, if you're interested in these commitments, to take a look at that particular message, empowering all generations. Jesus called and sent the young and the old. That's the kind of the bumper sticker version of that message, right? Everybody is included in God's saving purposes. And so here at North Cross, here is the people of God called North Cross. We are interested in doing the same, empowering all generations involved and included in and through the church. Just as important to Jesus, and therefore to us, is this second commitment I want to lift up for us today: serving others. Mark Twain claimed, if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. If there's something difficult to do, in other words, putting it off won't make it any easier. So friends, with that said, I want to jump right into the biggest serving others frog that there is. The hardest task, I believe, when it comes to serving others. I want to hear Jesus tell us what that could look like. And if you read in Matthew's Gospel, chapters 5, 6, and 7, we call the Sermon on the Mount. It's this great block of teaching that we have from Jesus, showing us, helping us understand the kind of life that he is inviting us to live, the kind of life that he is here to model and share. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that sermon, just a snippet of it, if you will, from Matthew 5, beginning with the 38th verse. I'm going to read from the Message paraphrase, giving us a little bit different language, perhaps, than we're familiar with, but maybe gives us a window into a way to understand what Jesus is inviting us to. So Matthew 5, verses 38 to 40 from the Message paraphrase. Here's another old saying that deserves a second look. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Is that going to get us anywhere? Here's what I propose. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it. If someone drags you into court and sues you for the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present of it. And if someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit for tat. Live generously. Friends, this is the word of God for the people of God, and we say, thanks be to God. I say that this is the hardest part of serving others, because here, what I understand Jesus to be inviting us to is not just serving anyone, but serving those that hurt us, those that are against us, those that take advantage of us. We might even call them our enemies. Loving God and loving our neighbors, according to Jesus, right, the life that he's inviting us to, looks like extending generosity to our enemies. It's serving those we don't like, who don't earn it, who don't deserve it. Now, friends, I could have a whole nother message that would unpack that idea, but I hope you hear in that that's grace. We don't earn God's love. We don't deserve God's love. We often act as enemies and rebel against God's ways and purposes. And yet God extends grace to us, generously loving us. And what Jesus is saying here is, love as you have been loved. It's hard. Let's just admit it right at the front. I don't want to sugarcoat this or try to skip over it and say, well, there's other ways we can love, and let's forget this part. Let's just start right here. Loving this way, extending generosity even to those who oppose us, our enemies, is being Jesus. It is the way of Christ. Again, friends, if our idea is to follow Jesus, if we're going to call ourselves Christians, if I'm going to stand before you and proclaim the good news of Jesus, if I'm going to say we're trying to live this life, then this is part of what that means. This might be the heart of what that means. No hitting back. No repaying violence with violence. No waiting for the right opportunity to get even. When we are hurt, when others come against us, when we find ourselves in opposition to others, what Jesus says is, use that opportunity to show them love. Oof. Right? Could it be that people are turning away from this Christian worldview, turning away from following Jesus because they haven't seen us living this out? They see us acting just like everybody else in the world, that we are just as rude, just as angry, just as vindictive as anybody else. Jesus says there's a better way. And friends, I believe that if we could show the world that better way, if we lived that better way, then other people could come to know Jesus through our example. They could see the love of Christ lived through us. That's what he's saying here. Don't do what the world does. No more eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Where does that get us? Jesus says serve. Perhaps better stated, he says become a servant. The distinction that I think is being made here is that Jesus serves because it's who he is. It's an expression of how he loves to serve others. He doesn't serve to feel better about himself or to earn recognition. He's not checking off a box on some list. He serves because serving is loving. The two things are the same. They're synonyms. They mean the same thing. To love your neighbor is to serve your neighbor. Giving who he is, his talent, his ability, his passion, his life, is how he loves. He's a servant. If you read through the Gospels, the Gospel of John 13, Jesus gathers his closest friends and even his closest enemies around a table, and he eats a meal with them. He serves them at that meal, and he washes their feet. And he says, I've given you an example of how we are to live in this world. I've shown you what it looks like to give yourself away to another. It's to become a servant. So I want to suggest that we stop helping out here and there. We stop doing mission or service, service opportunities as an activity. And we start becoming people who love God, who love others, who join God in that mission by serving the world. We become servants. Not just people who serve, but we become those who are servants. We become people who gather for encouragement and support and celebration. We gather to grieve, right? When we become the church, we do this worship thing together. We gather together, but we also are scattered back out to the world to meet the next need, to meet the needs of the world. And I think we should just, let's eat that frog, right? We're called to meet the needs of our enemies? How could we serve those who hurt us? How could we love our enemies? It's to become a servant. It's to become a friend, to end the cycle of violence, to surprise them not by hitting back, not by striking back, not by eye for eye, tooth for tooth, but by giving even more, making a gift of our lives to them. That's what changes the world. That's what changes an enemy into a friend, or what has the potential to. Here at North Cross, we have a group called Race and Faith. They gather together to study about cultures and experiences beyond their own, confronting their own privilege, their own understanding of other people's, and oftentimes engaging in difficult conversations. Maybe this is a place you could start. Just by learning more about people who you think are your enemies, who you would name as being opposed to you. Maybe it just starts there by trying to gain some understanding of why do they do what they do? How do they become who they are? What are they fighting for or against? Maybe it just we just become curious, and that can lead us into different ways of relating to people who are our enemies, who are difficult to love. Maybe we're called to meet the next need of maybe not somebody who's opposed to us, but maybe just somebody we don't know that well, just a stranger to us. Here at North Cross, this is where we lean on our missional partners. We've identified a number of organizations, churches that are doing really incredible work meeting the needs of people in our community. We don't need to reinvent those wheels. What we can do is we can partner with them. We can come alongside them and help them. Show us how we can be helpful. Show us what it looks like to serve. Show us where our time and our talents and our energies could be put to use. We've had a number of serve days just this past week as we're doing this message, we're sharing this message. I wonder about you, if you're in the KC metro area, we'd love for you to come partner with us and share in these experiences. Again, not as just an activity that you check off a list, but that is an expression of your love for Jesus, the way in which you're going to share that love with the world. That this might lead you into some opportunities where you could see the difference you could make, even with people you don't really know. This particular church, again, if you're in this area, if you're around Kansas City, and I say, there's quite a large area. I mean, Taylor Swift has been here now, right? I mean, this place has become popular. If you're around here, there's all kinds of needs you can meet right through this church. You could help with landscaping or changing light bulbs and furnace filters. You could help by serving the youth a meal. You could help by working in the nursery and providing childcare. You could help serve communion or hold open doors. And the list of ways in which you could get involved here is almost endless. If you're not in this area or it's not convenient for you to participate that way, maybe there's a church near you, a place in your community that you could pour yourself out. I guarantee you, if you showed up and said, I'm here to serve, I have no agenda other than to help, where could you use me? It'll change your life. It'll change that organization. It could change the world. Maybe the next need you're called to help with is it's closer to home. Maybe it's a friend or a family member. I'd like to think that these are the easiest needs to meet, but I recognize that that's not always true. Sometimes the relationships we have to get complicated, and the people that we're closest to sometimes they're the hardest to love. I get that, I understand that, but maybe there's a need in your friend group or in your family. What you need to do is just pay attention to those people, and the ones that are closest to you, you might find something emerging in their life that you could do something about, you could help with, you could love them in a very specific way. And that starts by paying attention, noticing their need. Maybe it looks like taking out the trash without being asked or emptying the dishwasher, right? It could be those little simple household chores. Maybe it's just listening without trying to solve a problem. This is one that I've tried to learn over time. My wife and I she would tell me something that's going on in her world, and I have a list of things of how she could fix that thing. Sometimes she doesn't need me to fix anything. She just needs me to listen. And so I try now to say, do you need advice? Do you want suggestions? Or do you just need me to listen? Are you just telling this to me so that you can process it? Sometimes she just needs an ear. And if she does want suggestions, she does want my advice, then she can ask for that. And I'm full of advice, so I have no problem sharing. But maybe the loving thing to do is not just to jump in with the fix, right? Maybe it's just to listen. Maybe it's rubbing feet. Maybe it's writing a love note. Maybe it's saying please or thank you or I love you. Pay attention to the people in your life, your friends and your family. Maybe the need you're being called to meet is close to home, and you could do that. At this point, I've listed a couple of opportunities. You might be thinking, serving, becoming a servant, sure seems like it could take up all your time. It could take up all your energy. It could leave you without the ability to take care of your own needs. I mean, we can't possibly meet everyone's needs, right? Right. I'm not saying becoming a servant is to think of others and to think of them first. But it doesn't mean that you empty yourself to the point of exhaustion or you give away everything and can't eat or don't have a home, right? That's not what we're talking about. Serving others means moving away from the center just a little bit. It means recognizing other people's value and worth as being at least as equal to your own. We can't possibly meet every need, and I don't believe we're called to. We read from near the beginning of Matthew's gospel, but if you keep reading in Matthew 25, Jesus will be talking, and he says that whatever we do for the least of the people around us, right? Whatever we do to meet the needs of those around us, we're doing it for him. Whatever we do. Do you hear that? It's not if you do really big things. It's whatever we do. Friends, here's what I want to suggest. I say this all the time. I think I try to jump to end world hunger. Maybe what it looks like is just helping one person that I meet be less hungry today. Whatever you do, you're doing it with and for Jesus. You're not going to solve all the problems of the world, and we're not called to. But serving is the invitation. How will you do it? Don't do it all. Just do your part. Just meet the next need that you can meet without judgment, without expectation, without an agenda. Right? Nobody has to earn our love. Nobody should be, we shouldn't say, do they deserve our love? That's not what we're about. Love, just love. Serve, just serve. Again, if you're in any way connected to North Cross here, we want to help you take the next step. We've listed a whole bunch of opportunities, some of which I've shared here today, but if you go to the church's website, playlearnshare.org, and you hit that connect tab, it'll take you to a serve section where you can learn more about serving in the church or in the community or in the world. Where is God calling you to serve? That's the question. There's some opportunities there that might be helpful, might guide your path a little bit. Who knows? Maybe as we begin to serve, maybe as we begin to live more like Jesus, as we serve people and see them as people, not as projects, maybe somebody could come to understand that this Christian worldview isn't just a bunch of words. It's not some antiquated ideas. It's a better way. No tit for tat, no eye for eye, no tooth for tooth, no violence for violence. But instead, we might show the world love, and perhaps somebody might choose to live their life as a servant as well. Let's pray that it's so. Will you pray with me? Servant God, who becomes one of us, for us, and with us, you show us what it looks like to love by serving us. Would you help those of us who would walk in your way, who would choose to follow you? Would you help us to be servants and not just people who occasionally serve? Would you help us, God, that our hearts and our minds and our lives might be oriented toward sharing your love in all the possible ways we can? That God, if there's a need that comes to our attention, would you give us the tools, the resources, the discernment, the wisdom to know how, if, and when we can meet that need? Would you empower us, God, to be your people, that we might show the world your love? That perhaps some might choose you as their own. We pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.